40 pigs, a burning tunnel, a collapsing tower, and a king who thought brute power could break anyone until he met fewer than 150 determined men. This is the true story of the Siege of Rochester, one of the strangest, most heroic, and most brutal episodes of medieval warfare. Welcome to True Medieval Tales. Let's go back to the year 1215. England stood on the brink of chaos. King John, youngest son of Henry II, had ruled for over 15 years. But his reign was far from glorious. He had lost nearly all the crown's ancestral lands in France. He levied crippling taxes, extorted the nobility, and regularly ignored the law. To many of his barons, he wasn't a king, he was a tyrant. When John's feud with the Pope led to England being excommunicated, things grew even worse. But the final straw came when John demanded new taxes without consent. The barons rebelled. In June of that year, the rebellious nobles cornered John at Runnymede and forced him to agree to the Magna Carta, the first document to limit the powers of an English monarch. It should have been a turning point in history. But John had no intention of honoring it. He bought time, fortified his strongholds, and appealed to the Pope to annul the charter. War followed within months, civil war, the First Barons' War, and at the heart of that war stood Rochester Castle. Located in Kent, guarding the River Medway, Rochester Castle was a masterpiece of Norman military engineering. Its central stone keep towered over the countryside. It controlled a key bridge between London and the coast. Whoever held it could control the flow of men, arms, and supplies between the capital and southern England. It had once been entrusted to William Marshal, the greatest knight of the age, but by 1215 it was under the influence of Archbishop Stephen Langton, one of John's most vocal critics. Langton handed the castle to William de Albini, a respected knight loyal to the rebel cause. Alongside him were 94 other knights, some crossbowmen, servants, and townspeople, about 140 to 150 people in total. It was a small force, but the walls they manned were massive. By mid-October, King John arrived with thousands of troops. He set up camp south of the castle, determined to reclaim it, quickly and ruthlessly. He began with diplomacy. He offered the defenders a chance to surrender. They refused. So, the siege began. Massive trebuchets hurled stone after stone at the curtain walls. Towers were rolled forward under cover of arrows. Sappers tried to burn the gates and breach the walls, but the defenders were relentless. They dumped boiling water, pitch, and oil on attackers. They used crossbows with deadly precision. They dropped rocks and beams from the battlements. The attackers were thrown back again and again. Even after days of fighting, John's army had made little progress. But he was not a man to give up easily. When the outer walls couldn't be breached by force, John turned to one of medieval warfare's most feared tactics, undermining. His engineers began tunneling beneath the southeast corner of the castle's keep. It was slow, dangerous work. Dirt was hauled out by hand. Wooden props held up the tunnel. The goal was to collapse the corner of the tower itself. To achieve this, they needed an inferno, hot enough to weaken the stone and collapse the support. John gave a now infamous order. "Bring me 40 of the fattest pigs in the kingdom. They weren't for eating, they were for burning." The pigs, old, greasy, unfit for meat, were slaughtered and stuffed into the mine. Their fat-soaked bodies were used to fuel a raging fire beneath the tower. The flames burned for hours. The wooden props were reduced to ash. The heat cracked the mortar and weakened the stone above, and then a deep rumble, a shudder through the earth, a roaring collapse. A massive corner of the keep crashed down in a cloud of smoke, dust, and broken stone. It was a catastrophic breach, a medieval nuke. Surely now the defenders would give up, but somehow they didn't. Instead, they retreated further into the remaining part of the keep. Despite the gaping wound in their walls, they fortified the ruins and continued to resist. Imagine the desperation inside that tower. Low food, dwindling arrows, freezing temperatures, the knowledge that no help was coming. Still, they held. For another month, every day they watched for reinforcements from rebel allies in London. Every night, they rationed dwindling food. Some sources say they resorted to eating horse meat. Others suggest they boiled leather straps for broth. Finally, in late November, the garrison surrendered. They had nothing left. William de Albini and his men emerged, gaunt, hollow-eyed, barely able to stand. But they had held out for over 7 weeks against a force more than 20 times their size. John wanted them all executed, hung like traitors. But his advisors stopped him. Executing noble knights could turn the remaining barons further against him. So de Albini and the others were imprisoned instead. Rochester had fallen. But it had taken King John everything to bring it down. He lost time, money, and men. His enemies regrouped. The rebellion didn't end. It escalated. Within a year, John was dead, from illness and stress, likely worsened by the war. His 9-year-old son, Henry III, inherited the throne. Under his rule and with William Marshall's help, the Magna Carta was reissued and peace gradually restored. Rochester Castle was repaired. The damaged corner of the keep was rebuilt with round towers, but the scars of the siege, physical and symbolic, remained. To this day, you can still see the fracture lines. The rebuilt section stands as a quiet monument to one of the most determined defenses in English history. A handful of knights, underfed, underarmed, and under siege, stood firm against a king. They lost the battle. But they earned something more enduring. They proved that a fortress isn't just walls and towers. It's the courage of those inside. That strength isn't measured in numbers, but in resolve. And sometimes it only takes a few to make history bleed. Thanks for watching True Medieval Tales. If this story of fire, stone, and rebellion intrigued you, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time for another true tale from the age of kings and castles.